Hello class, today I will be telling you how to find the root of a function. The root of a function is when the function crosses the x-axis, and as you can see in this example, is when y is equal to 0 and it crosses through the x-axis on this green point on this example problem. Now there's two ways that you can find the zeros of functions in this class, and I'm going to go through both of them. The first way to find the zero is factoring the equation, and you guys know how to factor, so you'll factor this into two of these, and then it'll be x and x, and from here it's the sum of these need to be -3. So you know it has to be a minus and a plus because it's -4 over here. And since it's -3, the factors of 4 are 4 and 1 and 2 and 2. So those have to equal 3. So there's no way if you add or subtract 2 that from each other that they'll equal 3. So you know it has to be 4 and 1. So if I make 4 positive and 1 negative, that gives me x squared minus x plus 4x. Oh, it needs to be -3x. So once you're figuring out how to factor, you know that you've just done it wrong. Okay, so we would make it -4 and +1. Okay, and simultaneously while factoring, we'll set the function equal to 0 because, as you can see again in my example, that the root is when y equals 0, and that gives us when the function hits the x-axis. Okay, so from here, if you multiply this quantity, if this quantity equals 0 and you multiply it by this, then this has to be 0 as well. Okay, so therefore we have to see what makes each quantity 0. Okay, so we set both quantities equal to 0, and then we solve for each one, and that will give us our roots. So simple algebra just says that we would move 4 to the other side. Make that 4 look a little bit better. 4 to the other side. And so that gives us x equals 4. Okay, and then from here, we would move 1 to the other side. So we would subtract 1, and that gives us -1 equals x. Now sometimes when you do problems, you have to check it to make sure it's correct in the formula, because once you get to upper level math, it can change on you. So let's plug these two into the original function to see if they give us a y value of 0. So 4 squared minus 3 times 4 minus 4. So 4 squared would be 16 minus 12 minus 4. And as you can see, that gives us an answer of 0. So this was our check. So now we know for sure that in this function that 4 is a root. Okay, now let's check the other function, or check the other root. So y equals -1 squared minus 3 times -1 minus 4. Okay, so we get 1 plus 3 minus 4. Okay, sweet. It equals 0. So in this case, the x values of, we can check that off, the x values of -1 and 4 are roots of this function. And you can also check this by graphing the function. As you can see here, I've graphed the same function, and at 4 the function equals 0, as you can see, and at -1 it also equals 0. So we did it correctly. A lot of the times, there's one other way to find the roots of equations in this class, and that is through the use of the quadratic formula. A lot of the times, it's not as easy to find, to be able to factor. As you can see here, we can try to factor this. Okay, so your simple factoring methods tell you that you need x and x, and that you need a minus and a plus, since this is negative, since this is a -4. So what can give me a solution of 1? Okay, so the factors of 4 again are 2 and 2 and 4 and 1. So 4 minus 1 won't work, and 1 minus 4 obviously won't work either to give me 1. And 2 minus 2 won't work, and 2 plus 2 won't work. So this function cannot be factored. Therefore, we have to do a new method to find the roots of this function. Okay, so a simple quadratic equation can be written as ax squared plus b. Actually, let me do this in a different color so it's easier for you to see. X squared plus b x plus c. Okay, this is just a simple way when it gets complicated that we can plug them into an equation, which our equation's right here, and we can find the roots of the function. So in this case, a would be the coefficient of the leading term, so the coefficient is 1 here. This coefficient is 1 as well, and this coefficient of c, which is just a number with no variable, is -4. So by looking at our equation given, we have, let me do a new color, a equals 1, b equals 1, and c equals -4. Okay, so the process of finding these roots, you plug into the equation, the quadratic equation. This is derived from this function, and you do a lot of math and you get to this function. And so to make it easier on students, you just plug each number in. So this is our equation. So it's the opposite of b, so -1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is -4, and all of that's over 2a, which 2a is 2 times 1. Okay, so now we just simplify and see what answers we get. Okay, so we get a -1 out front. That doesn't change. And then we have 1 squared, which is 1, minus 4 times 1 times -4. So 4 times 1 is 4, times -4 is -16. Okay, so, but really this is a -4 times -4, so we would get positive 16 all over 2. So now we just keep simplifying, and so we get -1 plus or minus radical 17 over 2. And since radical 17 cannot be reduced at all because 17 is a prime number and it's not a perfect square, this is our answer. So this is technically 2 roots because of the plus or minus. So our 2 roots would be -1 plus radical 17. Let me look that a little better. Over 2. And -1 minus radical 17 over 2. And when you would plug these into the equation, for x, they would give you y values of 0. And these are the two ways that you can factor, and so, or you can find the roots of equations. So remember that there's factoring and there is the use of the quadratic formula. So now that you know the two different ways, we're going to have a little assessment over what you've learned. And this will be your quiz that you have to take, and you'll have 10 minutes to complete it. And you can use either the factoring method or the quadratic formula to find the roots of equations. And I also like to say that you don't always have to factor. You could always use in this class, you could always use the quadratic formula, because as you can see here, a would equal 1, b would equal -3, and c would equal -4. So you could do the exact same thing here as well. You don't always have to factor. Factoring is just much easier, as you can tell, and it's a little bit less messy. So yeah, so here's your assessment, and you'll have 10 minutes to complete it. Go.